Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Growth Capital Podcast. I'm your host, Justin Dixon, and today we've got Jeffrey Kaplan on the podcast. He is the CEO of Optimist Ventures, as well as the director at Venture Asheville. Venture Asheville builds entrepreneurs and gets startups funded through three core initiatives: mentorship, financing, and events. So they have a very interesting financial model and mechanism that they use that they called venture philanthropy. It's a mixture of grant funding as well as venture funding to help grow these businesses that are just trying to get off the ground or are trying to rebuild after being decimated by Hurricane Helene, which came through back in 2024. So I think whether you're an entrepreneur or you're a venture capitalist, I think you'll get a lot out of this episode. So let's get Jeffrey on the pod. Interested in hearing conversations with private equity leaders, CEOs of private equity-backed companies, and startup entrepreneurs where they share their stories about their career journeys, starting, investing in, and scaling successful businesses, and the important role that having the right talent plays in building a successful business, then you are in the right place. Welcome back to another episode of the Growth Capital Podcast. Here's your host, Justin Dixon. All right, Jeffrey, welcome to the podcast. Good to see you, man.
Thank you, Justin. Really glad to be here with you today over the internet. Great. And I hope we're in person one day soon.
Yeah. No, I think that's always the fun part about the podcast is I do have the off chance of interviewing people all over the world. And so sometimes I do get a chance to meet them in real life, as they say. So let's jump right in. Give the audience that's watching and listening to this a little bit of an overview of who you are, where you are, and kind of what you're up to right now.
Absolutely. Really glad to do that. I'm Jeffrey Kaplan. I'm the director of Venture Asheville in the eponymously named Asheville, North Carolina. If you haven't heard about us, about our beer or our wonderful Blue Ridge Mountains people like to vacation to, maybe you heard about us from Hurricane Helene in October 24, which was a real trajectory changing, defining disaster here for the Asheville area. I've lived here just about 10 years, been visiting many years before that. Originally, I grew up in Miami in a Cuban family and went to University of Florida in Gainesville for college and then spent about 10 years there too. And not all of it was an undergrad. I did work for a while and then got my master's degree. And my master's degree was in entrepreneurship. And I chose entrepreneurship as my master's degree because I tell folks I didn't really know what I wanted to do when we left Gainesville. And I thought going into entrepreneurship would give me the tools and mindset and know-how and connections to find myself in any environment and create an opportunity. When I moved to Asheville, I started working in a software development agency, and that was a lot of fun. I was a product owner working in sales and working with development teams and design teams, and always volunteering in the ecosystem, holding pitch events and startup weekends and all that kind of ecosystem things. And when this job opened up, I applied for it 8 years ago, actually exactly 8 years ago. And it's been an absolute joy. I get to work with entrepreneurs, mentors, investors, economic developers, government, university partners, really at the center of what drives this ecosystem. Asheville, it's not the easiest place to live. It's a high cost of living. It's a desirable place to live. And both of those things just make it kind of typically not great job opportunities, when you think about a resort town. And we've kind of characteristically held Aspen as our antithesis. All these resort leisure towns don't want to become a place where people who work there can't live there. That's still accessible and still welcoming and very diverse. And being in the South, we have a lot more of those advantages. And yeah, it's absolute joy getting to work with folks. And now we have an accelerator and a fund, and we're on the verge of getting our full recovery from Helene. So things are looking good in Asheville.
Awesome. And I know we'll dig into this a little bit, but does the Venture Asheville help support in any way kind of the Hurricane Helene disaster? Do they help support all types of businesses that were affected, but also new businesses that are trying to get off the ground and all that fun stuff?
Yeah, so yes and no is the short answer. The long answer is Venture Asheville is the high growth entrepreneurship initiative of the Economic Development Coalition for Asheville-Buncombe County, right? It's a real mouthful. It took me a really long time to learn that. So essentially, our region has a five-initiative framework for economic development. You have the typical site selection. How do I bring a factory to my town and keep and retain jobs here, or create jobs here, net new jobs? The second is business retention and expansion. That's a company really growing. It's maybe, an early one I got when I was here, heard about a company needing to build a call center. And they were looking at St. Pete, Florida, Killeen, Texas, or Asheville. And so our team really rallied around how to demonstrate that they can continue to build and stay here in Asheville for a call center, for example. That's BRE, business retention and expansion. Workforce development, making sure that our universities and colleges are matching the needs of our local employers. So workforce development is a big part of it. Research is the fourth part. And the fifth is us, Venture Asheville. We have a unique name, unique URL. And that's because when you are a startup entrepreneur or a founder and you're looking for support, the first thing you think of is some, accelerator, incubator, ecosystem. You're not looking for the Chamber of Commerce or Economic Development Coalition. So our front door is different for sure. But once you get in, like my office is here in the Chamber of Commerce. So while I focus on high growth startups and tech enabled lifestyle ventures, other folks here will work with mom and pops in retail, consultants, your local law firm, accounting firm, professional services, right? They're very active in our Chamber of Commerce. Our large industries manufacturers are very active in the Economic Development Coalition. So to answer your point directly, no, I'm not working with GE Aviation. However, when there's an opportunity to, and this happens, where someone from GE Aviation contacts the Economic Development Coalition saying, hey, we need a speaker, someone who can talk about agentic AI, who do you have, right? My boss calls me, I go to my network, and we'll parlay that way. And everyone has a role in hurricane recovery. We were actually in the middle of our 5-year strategic plan. We were 3 months into our 6-month engagement with a consultant when Helene struck and devastated our community. And our board decided to create a signature recovery program in each of our 5 initiatives. So for Venture Asheville, that meant evolving the entrepreneurial ecosystem to meet the current needs.
Got it. And then so talk a little about Venture Asheville and maybe some of the programs that you run. I don't, I actually now live in Silicon Valley. And so obviously tech and AI and all that stuff is more than just a buzzword out here. It's obviously it's life and all that fun stuff. So I'm just kind of curious how Venture Asheville supports the community. If you're an entrepreneur in the area and you're like, now with vibe coding, a non-technical person can create at least the start of a tech startup. So talk about that. And then how does this Optimist Ventures arm kind of work around it? Because I know when we talked in the green room, so to say, there's some unique kind of structures and financing and support that you provide kind of all wrapped around all of this stuff.
Sure. When Venture Asheville was launched in 2014, the plan was, if we can locate or recruit tech, B2B SaaS companies here, we can be the next Austin. We can be the next Boulder. And if you talk to ecosystem builders in those communities, they say things like, with the right university research program or SBIR funding, we can be the next Research Triangle. And people in RTP, right, Raleigh-Durham area, they say, they're competing to be the next Boston. And Boston is competing to be the next Silicon Valley. And I think Silicon Valley is competing to be the next religion. That's my little joke. Where do you go from Silicon Valley, Yeah,
that's fair.
So everyone, and that worked for a little while. And we quickly burned through the first kind of generation of angel investors here. And any of the startups, we're only a population of about 100,000 people. It's not like we have a ton of tech founders out here developing technology to create the next great thing. And gosh, what's happening with AI right now, vibe coding is a godsend to a region like ours. I know a lot of people like to poo-poo it as security flaws or whatever. We're knocking out apps. I personally am knocking out apps. And when I was a product owner of a software development agency, it would taking us 12 months and $250,000 to do things I'm doing in a weekend at night when my kids are sleeping, just knocking something out. So I think for a place like ours, what a godsend. Maybe that's too religious. What a benefit, what an opportunity for folks to be able to get their MVPs out the door, get early user testing, get that traction, prove the model. And then when you have some funding, you can build up. So anyway, when it comes back to Venture Asheville, we I tell folks our value prop is that we build entrepreneurs and get startups funded through 3 core initiatives: mentorship, financing, and events. For mentorship, we use MIT's venture mentoring system. It's used in, I think, nearly 200 cities around the world. It's a team-based approach to mentorship, and we do a long-term engagement. Companies are in our program for a minimum 1 year, some as many as 2.5. As long as they're working on a 12-month goal and growing, we will keep them in the program. So after 12 months, you can set new 12-month goals. But it is not a 6-week accelerator or a sprint or even an incubator. It is truly a mentorship program. And we say to help companies through the inflection points of the growth curve. On the financing side, prior to Optimist Ventures being created, it was really connecting folks to capital, whether it was Venture South, Co-Founders Capital in Durham, Abundance Capital in Greenville. Our job, my job, and my coworker Matt's job have great relationships with funds. So when we make an introduction, it's a very warm intro that's somewhat qualified. And then when it comes to events, we do things that really try to boost the sophistication or competency of the ecosystem. So we do an innovation summit, we do an award show, we do a demo day, and we do crazy stuff. We partner with a circus that comes to town, and they talk about how the CEO, founder of the circus, lives and works with all of his employees 365 days a year, and they're a global community of talent, and everyone has their role. He talked about the 4 agreements, nonviolent communication. It's really fascinating. If this guy can make it work living with his staff, you in your office with 8 people can make this work, Yeah. So really trying to do different things that engage folks, that surprise folks, delight them, because we don't have like a big university. We don't have Chapel Hill here. We're Asheville, so we don't have a big university with the talent, lecturers, or guest speakers coming in. So we try to fill that role. So this year, technically last year, we launched Optimist Ventures, which is a for-profit spin-out of the Economic Development Coalition. So this is a fund that is the C Corp of it is wholly owned by our nonprofit. And we, as a nonprofit side of it, are able to raise grants, do recruitment, outreach, and supply the curriculum for an accelerator, while the for-profit side is simply a financial vehicle for investors. And this gets into where we've really pivoted post-hurricane into this phrase I'm trying to socialize called venture philanthropy. So the way venture philanthropy works is our fund is half grant and half investment. Using our nonprofit status, we raised philanthropy dollars from individuals and a couple of corporations like Poppy Popcorn, Bank of America, Truist Foundation, and many high net wealth individuals who donated to our fund. So we raised $500,000 initially to use as grants. And the second $500,000 we raised for a total $1 million came from high net worth individuals in a pretty classic LLC Inc. structure with a management company. And what we're doing now is we're investing in a new thesis. So the thesis is, let me start the hypothesis. Is it possible to create a fund that nurtures the strengths of a region, does not require giving up equity, and can deliver a return competitive with venture funds back to investors? So that's our big hypothesis. Can you even do something like this? And after a lot of time in spreadsheets, we've discovered that with this vehicle we created called the SPA note, which stands for Shared Profit Agreement, we're doing essentially a shared earnings agreement. It functions like a royalty. So companies are getting $50,000 up front. Again, half is a grant, half is a SPA note. And over 6 years, they only pay back on that second half. They only pay back on the SPA note, not the grant. They keep the grant, they use it for whatever they want. Now, what that does is it gives our founders, I also mentioned the term is a 6-year term, and you pay $6,000 a year at a minimum, no more than $9,000 a year. And all this is on our website if you want to see the math and how it works out, how it breaks down. We have a lot of documentation on it. We want people to see it and use it and experiment with it. But essentially, a company is going to get $50,000 and pay back $36,000 over 6 years. So the founder is getting a negative 10% effective interest rate. Whereas because of that cost of capital being so low and every dollar from an investor being matched by a philanthropist, our investors are able to get a 13% IRR, internal rate of return. Now, some other interesting quirks we had to learn, and I hope other folks who are in this nonprofit for-profit structure get something out of this, because we spent a lot of time and money with lawyers figuring out our structure. So we cannot pull a management fee or carried interest out of our fund, because if we did, it would go back to the nonprofit, which would lead to potentially a personal benefit. So if my comp, for example, was tied to a carried interest, that's something we learned is called private inurement, leveraging a nonprofit for a personal benefit or for-profit benefit. That would send me to jail. Nobody wants to do that. So we've had to isolate with many layers and other boards and governance structures. All for-profit activity is completely separate from the accelerator. It's just like a nice to have. So imagine two separate entities saying, hey, you develop the founders and we'll put cash behind them. And that's how it works. So we've raised other funds in our capital campaign and through grants to support our team. And we've completed our first cohort last year in September. We've done 7 companies. And these are all tech-enabled lifestyle ventures. These are not high-growth companies. These are not unicorns. In fact, it is an anti-unicorn fund. We're not looking for a 1 in 10 portfolio return. We want 10 out of 10 to give us singles and doubles. It's like money balling a fund to maximize wins across a community.
And then, so if I'm one of these potential tech investors, so what's the benefit or disadvantage of going through something like this spa note combo grant plus a philanthropy? What do you call it? Venture philanthropy, I think. Between that versus raising $50,000 from an angel investor or some other kind of small VC.
Great. Like we're not telling people don't do this. We tell people if you can get debt, get debt. If you can get cheap debt, do that before talking to investors. I think our closest competition is probably debt, and purposefully, going back to those early comments of we're not trying to be Austin or Boulder or Silicon Valley. What grows really well here are CPG companies, consumer packaged good companies, really scalable food and beverage businesses. Those are not going to, yield that 10 to 100x return that an investor needs in their portfolio. So if you're an individual angel and you want to work with an individual business, if you can get 50 grand from that person for some fair deal, go for it. But most likely the funds in town, the funds in our community are not going to invest in them because the multiple on the exit will not be high enough.
Right. So for the founder there, because you're not taking equity in the business. Did I hear that right? You're
That's
essentially
correct. We're
just
not
getting
equity and we're not debt. So and we're not on cap tables. So we've had to put an open letter on our website to explain to other investors and other founders, if you're taking this deal, here's how you disclose it. Here's how you educate them, and we're available. So if you want me to talk to your due diligence committee, I'll explain how it works. There is actually in the SPA note a buyout clause. So if you are 2-3 years into our repayments and you do a seed round or a Series A or any round really, it's going to force a buyout of the remainder of your payments, which will max out at $36,000. So if you're doing a round for $500,000 to $1 million, $2.5 million, and you tell your investors, use of funds $20,000 is buying out our shared profit agreement, I don't think investors will have a problem with that, knowing that we're not in your cap table and it's not debt. It just wipes us out from future repayments.
And that is a requirement for them for them to raise. They have to buy you out. You can't roll into the next or continue on.
There's lots of schemes. I don't mean scheme to be a derogatory word. But there's lots of mechanisms out there for even things like offering investors a chance to roll in their returns into the next fund, into Fund 2. At this time, look, it's our first year doing it. We're a nonprofit. We're a very limited team. All professional services are outsourced on contract basis. So I'm trying to reduce the amount of ambiguity or everything we're doing is unknown. And so I'm trying to reduce those unknowns and keep this thing between the rails and manageable.
So you mentioned that the first cohort is kind of went through, and you said end of September they kind of graduated, if you will.
That's
I guess let's talk about some of the, we're recording this in kind of mid-May 26. So obviously there's probably some data that you've been able to capture on success, failures of those cohorts.
Well, knock on wood, so far no failures.
That's good.
We're 2 quarters into our repayments. Everyone's making payments. We're happy with that. We set them up on a QuickBooks auto renewal. Everyone's making payments. So really happy with where that is. So I'm going to talk about Asheville Tea Company. Asheville Tea Company has been around for, I think, maybe 10 or 11 years. So it's really hard to think about them like a startup. But they were a small business, a couple million in revenue. And they had their entire factory was like an aluminum shell warehouse, was lifted off the foundation during the hurricane. It was in a flood zone. It was picked up as one unit, floated down the river, hit a utility pole, and just split open like an aluminum can. And then, Jessie Dean, the founder, goes back. She's finding her tea bags all down the road and down the river. So over $100,000 inventory lost. She has 8 employees. So with our funding, she was able to retain her employees, get new inventory, and she just signed a lease on a new warehouse just down the street from us on Broadway, right near downtown. So great. And she's making repayments. We're thrilled to see that. Another one is this guy named Dune Michel. Dune is a Frenchman, a French guy who moved here, started the French Broad pastry, and he makes the most amazing croissants and financiers, and I'm going to get them all wrong, Queen Amines, and I mean, and his really interesting business model. He only sells at farmers markets.
Okay.
So his margins are insane. He has a really small, decent, it's a fine bakery space. It's not, you don't want to, there's no service at the bakery. There's no retail. There's no brick and mortar. You can't go visit it. It's just for production. And then he was hitting 6 to 8 farmers markets a week across upstate South Carolina, way West Carolina, like in Cashers and Highlands, east to Old Fort. He was going, it's 3 or 4 in town a week. He told me, I don't want to give away, I can't share like his revenue numbers, but his EBITDA was something like 35-40%, putting him more than 20 points ahead of other bakers in competition because all of his team was flex team and the margins on a farmer's market were so high. You just have your tent and you're selling pastry out of the car. So after the hurricane, he had no farmers markets for a whole quarter, right? You imagine his revenue being a big fat zero for what should be the busiest time of the year for Asheville. Fall is our busiest time for the leaf peepers, as we call them. All right, so we give him an investment. He puts $40,000 into a freezer. And I thought, damn, dude, that's 80% of your funds. That's a very nice freezer you've built there. And he explained that the freezer unlocks wholesale. So in this year, so he went through the cohort in 2025 and 2026. January opens up wholesale accounts. He's getting picked up at all the coffee shops. He's getting picked up at the nicest restaurants in town. And they want to serve his pastries. Like they are getting benefit from his brand in the nicest restaurants and coffee shops in town. It gets better. Then he's doing so well from this wholesale that he buys a bread business, buys another factory, and now grows to 4 new full-time employees. So now he's expanding his product mix. He's still not doing brick and mortar. The wholesale and farmers markets are killing it. And he's created 4 full-time gainful employed jobs in Asheville. I don't know of other venture funds that are promoting that kind of community upgrade and community benefit while at the same time, and we're giving 13% back to investors. So this is a really unique model. And I'm so proud of the folks who've been in it. So 6 of the 7 companies were CPG companies. The 7th was a tech services company that builds LMS collaboration software. They take your trainings, put them online. If you're trying to do an ebook or something, they do all that kind of stuff. Called Online Training Concepts. Great company. We've worked for them for 2 courses online. And 6 out of the 7 companies were female founded. Again, I can't, and that wasn't on purpose. That's what came in, most competitive applications. And again, I want to hold these metrics up, apples to apples with other venture funds. Are you having this much community impact? Are you having, instead of a MOIC, right, multiple on invested capital, what's like the job creation? What's the net revenues brought into a community? How many of these employees are now buying homes and cars and sending kids to school and camp because they have gainful employment and it's fulfilling, rewarding work? You're working in a startup. It can be very rewarding that way.
Yeah. And so you mentioned the application process. So you had 7 people in the cohort. Like, what is the process to apply? So if somebody just happens to be listening to this and they either live in Asheville or they know somebody in Asheville, what's the criteria? Like, obviously one of the businesses was 11 years old, you said, and they kind of needed almost like gap funding to find this new warehouse. And so what's the process? Like, how does it work?
So we're going to open applications up in June 2026 for a second cohort. This application is going to be a little bit longer than our last one, thanks to the city of Asheville. It's a good problem to have. We were awarded $855,000 out of disaster recovery funds from the city. So we have a lot more reporting we have to do now. But we have 33 spots remaining in our accelerator. And we'll do 13 this year, 10 in 2027, and 10 in 2028. We're looking for a minimum revenue of $150,000, maximum revenue of about $2 million, because that's a sweet spot where $50K makes a big difference. If you're already doing more than $2 million in sales, you're probably going to get an angel deal. We don't need to eat anyone else off anyone else's plate. The application's online. If you want to look at it, you just have to live in Western North Carolina to qualify. Preference for Asheville with the later dollars, but the earlier dollars are more broadly sourced. So we can do anyone in Western Carolina. It's a lengthy application online. It's going to take you, a couple hours to get through everything, because now you have to really show a disaster tieback, which could be as simple as, hey, no tourists were coming here for 6 months. I lost employees. I lost revenue. And because of that, lost inventory, whatever it is. There's lots of ways, or we had physical damage to our building. We have no building anymore. So everything in between. After the written application, we're going to score and send feedback to everybody. We'll invite about 20 to 25 companies in person to do a pitch with a selection. Selection committee is made up of prior founders in Optimist, current mentors across Optimist and Elevate, that's our mentorship program, and our staff. And we're going to take that down to 13. That's all we can take this year for the checks we can write. Those folks will, July will be screening and selection, and we'll start August 2026. We'll wrap up right before Halloween, which would be nice so the first day of the accelerator should be August 3rd. Those companies get $25,000 as a grant. And the last day, October 29th, they'll get a $25,000 SPA note. If I pan my camera over, you might be able to see the checks behind me, actually. There they are.
That's cool.
We have a couple of giant checks back here that I take out every opportunity I can.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I would just walk around with them and just be like, look at my big check here. Interesting. And so obviously these founders are getting some money. Do they get access to other, you mentioned mentorship is one of the things. I'm curious, as they're growing, because, growing from a business from $150,000, hopefully to $2 million, there's a lot of things that you don't think about when you have a business like the French pastry guy who was just driving around to a bunch of different farmers markets. But when you go into wholesale, you got to be a little more strategic and buttoned up, and so you give them kind of the tools to kind of elevate themselves as owners, founders, et cetera, as they become more mature businesses.
Yeah, I don't mean to talk about my buddy Dune out of school, but this was not his first attempt at doing wholesale. So he started in a wholesale approach, I think, January 25, and he wasn't as prepared, and he wasn't as polished, and it wasn't as professional. He worked with a consultant, and he put an amazing menu together. He got his pricing really dialed in, and then even wrapping his van, so he didn't show up in an old beat up Honda Odyssey. Right? You can do that for the farmers market, but when you're pulling up to a really nice restaurant, you got to look the part. It's like why the FedEx guys have clean trucks every week. It's part of professionalism, and that really did make a difference. Our curriculum is based off of entrepreneurial competencies. This is graduate research I worked on under Dr. Mike Morris when we were both at Florida. He's now at Notre Dame. And he did a study compiling this list of 13 competencies, like opportunity recognition, risk mitigation, tenacity, the ability to build and leverage networks, ability to adapt yet maintain focus. And so we take that assessment. We give our founders, and you get a score of 1 to 5 on each of those assessments. And then we built the curriculum. So every week we're themed around one of these topics, one of these competencies. Now, here's the hard part, Justin. You cannot think your way into entrepreneurship. You cannot read a book or do an online course and become an entrepreneur. You become an entrepreneur doing entrepreneurial things. So each of our competencies has challenges at the end of it. So let's say Monday, they're going to do the online learning module. They'll do opportunity recognition. They learn about the concept, the theory behind it, the research behind it, how they can apply it to themselves, and the challenges. So it's like my favorite one. We tell folks, go somewhere you have to wait in line and think of 3 ways to make the line move faster. Just while waiting in line, standing around. And then when they come to our session, it's all day Thursday, one every Thursday a week for 12 weeks, they have to workshop what they learn. Where do they go? Where do they wait in line? How would they make it move faster? And this is that muscle memory, that practice of competency development and the peer mentoring and sharing. So that's going to be the first kind of 2 hours is review of the competency and what are the experiences and challenges you went through. Then we bring in a guest speaker. We have a community luncheon. So the speaker, the founders, our staff, and all the mentors, and we even go broadly into the ecosystem. And that's something we ripped off from Y Combinator. They say that the most effective part of Y Combinator is the weekly dinners. So we do that for lunch. It's always a different caterer. People love it. And then it ends with one-on-one mentorship. So your last hour of the day is you work one-on-one with an assigned mentor to you.
Got it.
And it ends in a big flashy demo day, big community event. And that's where we hand out the checks.
Yeah. Do you give them big checks or little checks?
They actually get both. The big check is for the camera, and the little check, I still, I like writing a paper check. I like writing $25,000 to the founder's name and signing it. I really like doing that. So I do a paper check.
No, that's awesome. Let's talk a little about AI, because we can't not talk about AI because we talked about it a little bit already, but I'm curious kind of how you might be leveraging it within kind of Venture Asheville and Optimist Ventures to help with the application process, with helping to kind of create things. And then do you provide any type of AI specific mentoring, coaching within the cohort so that, maybe people that are not as AI forward or tech savvy can really see the benefits to not only using it to, for lack of a better way to say it, write a better email, but also to use it as a thought partner for these founders who may not have other partners in the business. And so they need somebody that they can, quote unquote, talk to bring up ideas or bounce ideas off of, et cetera, et cetera.
That's a great question. And it's part of what we consider tech-enabled companies. Right now, if you're not using in every business some AI to power what you do, give you a superpower or streamline some stuff within the business, that lets you work on the business, like that's a missed opportunity. So in terms of coaching, I actually, one of the AI bots I built is that executive dashboard. I tell folks, I cannot control my inbox and my calendar. So I built vibe coded an app in Claude. I've shared it with a bunch of folks around the office. We all hit the same button. It goes through our calendars and goes through our inboxes and prioritizes for us and gives us our own dashboard of things coming up on our radar. So I'm using it for my personal kind of executive dashboard management. I've been using it since I think 2022 is when ChatGPT first came out. I remember an early thing I did was I wrote an NIL contract for our big awards show, our big awards gala called the Venture 15. And NIL had just gotten through Supreme Court. ChatGPT had just come out. So I thought, let's put this together and make it a really fun way. So we had 10 student athletes from UNC Asheville, work in the room as ushers, as award presenters, and they were all NIL. And we did a whole thing about it on social media where I wrote the NIL contract in ChatGPT, they all signed it, and this is how we're bringing the universe together. Lately, we're going to be using AI in another dashboard I built on a pitch coach. That will help us across the dozen or so reviewers without using something like Salesforce or other Google Forms. This is going to allow us to track each of our reviews across the application, and it kind of gives a rough estimated score based off things like, are they going through the 10 steps of the pitch? Are they leaving anything out? Did they leave out revenue model or business model or market size, and highlight that for us, kind of raise some red flags for us in the reviews, which should help us be more consistent in our scoring and faster in our reviews. When it comes to the founders in the program, we're lucky to have a group of digital nomads or remote workers here in town. They just brokered 5,000 members today.
Wow.
And so we've pulled from many of those folks who work remotely, our CTOs or fractional CTO types. We just did a workshop 2 weeks ago with a guy named Julio Barras, and it was how to build a Claude Code app, how to vibe code your first app. We're evangelizing it. We want to be really out front to demystify and take the scariness. Oh, if I go on AI and if I sync up my I don't know, my ERP to it, it's gonna, I don't know, wipe out our database. Like not necessarily. Like my Claude cannot do anything without an approval. So for example, it's like, here's your dashboard today. Are you ready for me to post it? I'll click post, right? And it's like, do you want me to draft these emails? I'm like, draft, but it doesn't send for me. I think it's a common sense around it. Look, small communities, under-resourced, underfunded, you got to pull an edge anywhere you can. The AI is blowing the doors open for folks.
Yeah. Before we kind of wind this thing down, I'm curious, can this type of a scenario, is this only unique to Asheville because of the disaster relief that has been provided from an economic standpoint, or could this venture philanthropy model be replicated in other large and small towns across America?
Necessity is the mother of invention, right? We couldn't have gotten to this place without the incredible swell of philanthropy from individuals and organizations and corporations that wanted to see the small business community bounce back. And we create a vehicle matching the needs. Having said that, I don't think it works only in disaster communities, but communities that are not those top tier startup Blink or startup Genome, whatever you want to call it, we're the number 10 ecosystem in the world. Like, I don't.
Yeah.
You might be, but there's probably a lot of entrepreneurs in your community that are not being served by the angel community or the venture community. So what about those folks? And what about, like, the tons of rural communities like ours that have really talented, interesting people, but their ventures don't meet the current existing funding models out there? Or investors, would love to invest locally wherever they are, but they're not going to get those massive X returns on a portfolio. I'm comfortable with evangelism. I'm comfortable being out there. We're publishing all of our material on our website. So if anybody wanted to look at our curriculum or see a sample of a spa note, it's up there. Would love you to use it. And if you need help talking to your stakeholders in the community, could this be a good fit? I would love to chat with your folks. We have a couple conversations like that coming up with cities across North Carolina. But yeah, I personally, I'm a little biased. I'm an entrepreneur. Yeah, I think it could be in every community in America, of course.
Yeah. Well, no, I'm curious. I mean, I grew up in a very, very small town in north central PA. And so, while I haven't been back in a very long time, I'm quite positive that there are people there that are smart, but they're not going to create a business necessarily that's going to become venture worthy, right, that's going to go from $0 to $1 billion. And they may be, right, that's not impossible, but they probably can start a business that will be able to generate enough money to return investor capital with some extra skin, and also be a good business for the local community, right? Not every business has to be a unicorn. I would rather have a really sexy, very profitable, boring business that kind of just runs on its own versus, trying to scale to being the next Google or Facebook, Meta, whatever you want to call it. So that's interesting. As we kind of do wind things down here, I'm curious kind of what does the next 12 months of priorities kind of look like for you and Venture Asheville? Obviously you've got the cohort coming up, but outside of the cohort, like, are there other initiatives that you guys are really trying to drive forward in the next, call it 6 to 12 months?
Let me be very clear. This is not a solicitation. I want to be very clear about what I'm about to say next. This is not a solicitation for our fund. But what's next for me in the next 12 months is filling our round. So we are fully committed on the grant philanthropy side, and now I'm out there hustling to match it on the for-profit side. So that's what I'm doing in Optimist.
Do investors have to be in Asheville?
No, they don't.
Can they be? Okay.
Currently, they are. Currently, it's one family office and about a dozen high net worth individuals. With the credibility and support from the city funding, it's opened doors to a number of impact investing, like large institutions. And those calls are going well, except I'm finding out we're too small. I talked to
they want to write bigger checks.
Yeah, and I asked for $720,000, and they said that's just too small for us. Like, oh man, I should ask for more.
Yeah. It's all relative depending on who you're talking to.
Right.
I used to work for a wealth advisory company, and the money is different, right?
Absolutely.
Where $50,000 to a small business in rural community is a lot of money. it's not big enough to even get the pen out to write a check for some of these bigger ventures. So,
I'm confident we'll fill the round. There's so much enthusiasm and traction right now, and really we've got, it's also 720 over 3 years, so it's actually really quite manageable, even if we stay with all high net worth individuals.
Yeah,
we'll get there.
Got it.
Otherwise, the ecosystem still churns along. This, we still have Elevate, so we still have founders coming in every day and mentors coming in every day. In September, we'll do Asheville Entrepreneurship Week. That's a big week-long celebration. It's like Startup Week. We'll do our Innovation Summit that week as well. We're doing that with Baird Private Wealth Management. They're a national financial services company. We'll be looking at trends in business. We're also really pushing ESOPs and the Silver Tsunami that keeps coming up over and over again. In December, we'll have our Venture 15 and Venture Asheville Honors. And then 2027, we pick back recruitment up again. That's kind of the cycle to go through.
Fair enough. Well, it sounds like you've got a lot on your plate. So Jeffrey, I really appreciate you being a guest on the podcast. Let's wrap things up here with a 3-pack of questions that I ask every guest. So first question, what's a book that you may have found influential or helpful that you'd want to recommend?
A book. It's really an essay that I come back to at least once a year, sometimes 2-3 times a year, is from Seneca the Younger. It's about 2,000 years old. It's an essay called On the Shortness of Life. Seneca, Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, Zeno are kind of like the pantheon of Stoic philosophy. And I keep coming back to Seneca's On the Shortness of Life. And every time I go through it, something else sticks out to me. So I was thumbing through it ahead of our podcast. And the quote I came out with is, "Life will seem especially short if you only pursue status or power. You'll always have your eye on a future goal and won't be able to enjoy your current situation." And that just screams at me for all the founders I know and colleagues and friends who are always looking for the next best thing, and they're missing out on, like, the early days of your startup are the best days, man, when it's scrappy and nuts and you can't believe this is being held together and you can't believe that this person took a risk and quit their job to come work with you or move to this town to come work with you. Those early days, man. And I think people kind of speed through them because they want that big round or they want to move up or they want that big office. And the truth is, the early days are the best days. And so you got to enjoy your current situation.
Yeah, I mean, I think that can be applied to everything in life, right? Sure. Everybody wants the bigger car, the bigger house, the bigger job, all that fun stuff. And then when they get it, there's always the next thing and they see something else. And yeah, I think that obviously can be applied directly to startups, but also to just different parts.
I have 2 young kids, a 6 and 4-year-old. I got to remind myself that all the time. Like, this is the best part.
Yeah.
This is the best part of parenting. Even though they're the hardest,
parts of it,
this is the best part.
The best part.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Second question here. What is your favorite thing to do outside of work?
So I got into a new hobby about a month or 2 ago. My nephew is having a bar mitzvah in January or February next year. And I decided I was going to make him a shofar. Do you know what a shofar is?
I do not.
It's a ceremonial ram's horn that is a horn. You blow it at ceremonies in the Jewish religion. And so I found a guy who has some rams. I got an old ram's horn, and I've been carving it and polishing it, and then my wife's cousin's son, so he's not really my cousin, but my cousin-in-law, I guess, second cousin-in-law, will have a bar mitzvah in March next year, and he heard about the shofar thing. He's like, "Oh, that'd be cool. Can you make one for Nathan?" You sure can. So I'm out here talking to anybody who lives on a farm. I say, any chance you got a ram's horn or you know someone with rams? So that's my new thing is polishing, testing out shofars.
Well, that has got to be definitely the most unique thing that anybody has ever mentioned on the podcast. So I appreciate that.
And I do it at night. I do it at night when my kids are asleep and you hear from the basement like a
yeah, I'm sure they love that.
Reverberating in the house.
That's awesome. Very cool. Well, that sounds like a very interesting and fun hobby. I guess next question last question here, favorite vacation spot?
I grew up in Miami. I think I mentioned that earlier. And my best memories as a kid were family trips down to the Keys. Like Key West is great. Key Largo is great. Everything in between is awesome. I mean, countless weekends fishing, snorkeling, boating on the beaches. I mean, gosh, like my best childhood memories are all in the Florida Keys. So any chance I get, I will go to the Florida Keys.
Awesome. Very cool. Yeah, I've not been to the Keys. I've only been to Miami once, and that was a long time ago. And it wasn't even the cool parts. I was there for like training. So
and the Keys are rustic, right? They're built resiliently, so there's no big buildings. Everything's got to withstand hurricanes all the time.
I was gonna say that they can't really build it above what one,
like cinder block buildings that are 1 story tall. And it's you feel like you're at the end of the world, and you have amazing water around you and amazing seafood, and a lot of people are on party time,
island time.
Yeah, it's a great place to be if you can get there for good weather.
Yeah. Awesome. Jeffrey, man, really cool to meet you. Appreciate it. If people want to learn more about Venture Asheville and all the work you're doing there, what's the best way to connect with you?
My linkedin.com/in/JeffDude, or Jeffrey Kaplan in the search bar, optimistventures.co and ventureasheville.com.
Awesome. Jeffrey, man, really appreciate
it.
Thank you, Justin. Wish you all the best success. And thanks for being a guest on the podcast.
My pleasure. Thank you.
I hope you found at least one actionable insight from this episode of the Growth Capital Podcast, your one-stop shop for insights from private equity leaders, CEOs, and startup entrepreneurs on starting, investing in, and scaling successful businesses, as well as the role having the right talent plays in growing a successful business. It would be greatly appreciated if you would rate and review this podcast. And if you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe and drop us a comment so we can expand the audience of this podcast. Thank you for all your support, and don't forget about upcoming episodes dropping every Tuesday.